There was a plant in the ancient world that people valued so highly. Merchants weighed it against silver denarii to set its price. No gold, silver coin, by weight, measure for measure. That plant was Silphium, and for roughly 6 centuries, it was the single most traded, most sought after, and most written about commodity in the Mediterranean world. Emperors stockpiled it, physicians prescribed it, poets named it in the same breath as love. And in this video, we're getting into exactly what Silphium was, why an entire civilization was built on top of it, and how it vanished completely from the earth. Stay tuned, and if this is the kind of history you want more of, go ahead and subscribe. The story of where Silphium came from reads less like botany and more like mythology, which is probably why people in Cyrene never let go of it. Around 631 BC, a sudden black rain fell on a stretch of coastline in what is now northeastern Libya. Shortly after, an unknown plant began growing from the soil where that rain had touched the ground. The Cyreneans called it Silphium, referenced it in their founding myths, and treated its appearance as a sign that this particular strip of coast was chosen land. The plant grew in a narrow band along the North African shore, roughly 125 miles long and no wider than the hills would allow. Every attempt to transplant it, to cultivate it somewhere else, and to coax it into foreign soil failed completely. It grew where it grew and nowhere else. That geographical stubbornness is what made Cyrene wealthy, because Silphium could only come from one place on earth. Every gram of it that reached Rome, Athens, Alexandria, and Carthage had to pass through Cyrenean hands first. It was used as a cooking ingredient, a preservative, a contraceptive, a fever treatment, a coughing suppressant, and a seasoning so popular that Roman recipes treated it the way modern cooking treats salt. The economy of Cyrene didn't merely depend on Silphium, it was Silphium. The city's tax records, trade routes, political alliances, and agricultural priorities all organized themselves around the harvesting and exporting of a single wild plant that no one had ever successfully farmed. The Romans called it laser, and it showed up in nearly every serious cookbook of the ancient world. Apicius, whose recipes represent the gold standard of Roman elite cuisine, referenced Silphium so frequently, it reads almost like a reflex. It went into meat dishes, sauces, wines, and preservatives. A small booze vessel specifically designed to store Silphium resin was considered a kitchen essential in any household wealthy enough to afford one. This was not an occasional luxury ingredient. It was a defining flavor of Roman high gastronomy. Its medical applications carried equal weight. Ancient physicians used Silphium to treat fever, indigestion, sore throats, seizures, and infected wounds. But the use that drove demand above everything else was contraception. Writers across Greece, Rome, and North Africa documented it as the most reliable method of birth control available in the ancient world, taken as a drink or used directly. In a time when no pharmaceutical industry existed, that single property made Silphium worth almost any price a merchant wanted to name. The plant produced small, heart-shaped seeds, and many historians believed those seeds are the direct origin of the heart symbol used today to represent love. The connection makes sense when you consider that Silphium was already entangled with desire, pleasure, and intimacy in the ancient imagination. It appeared on Cyrenean love tokens and was referenced in erotic poetry. The hardship people now put on Valentine cards may have nothing to do with the human heart anatomically and everything to do with a plant that the ancient world associated with sex, love, and the prevention of pregnancy. That demand, layered on top of its culinary and medical value, created pressure on the wild population of Silphium that the plant could not survive. Cyrene's governors understood early that the Silphium needed controlling. The plant was wild, it didn't reproduce quickly, and the harvestable zones were fixed and finite. So they imposed strict quotas, kept official records of how much was cut each season, and stored reserves in the public treasury the same way a modern government holds strategic oil. For a while, the system held. The plant was stressed but surviving. Roman demand broke that system. As Rome grew wealthier and its appetite for Silphium expanded, the price climbed high enough that illegal harvesting became one of the most profitable enterprises on the North African coast. Local herders, traders, and middlemen began cutting the plant outside the official quarters and selling directly into black market networks that bypassed Cyrenean export controls entirely. Ancient sources mention governors attempting to prosecute this, but enforcement across open scrubland with no fencing and no surveillance was effectively impossible. The ecological demand for the unregulated harvesting compounded faster than anyone measured at the time. Silphium had no cultivation backup. Every root cut illegally was a root that wouldn't regenerate in soil that the plant had already proven was the only soil on earth it will grow in. The official harvest records from Cyrene show a steady decline in yields beginning around the 1st century BC, not a sudden collapse but a slow bleeding that nobody stopped in time. By the time the scarcity became undeniable, the population had already crossed the threshold it needed to recover from. The last recorded stock of Silphium was reportedly sent to Emperor Nero as a curiosity sometime around 54 AD, and after that, nothing. Thank you for watching. Until the next one.